right, welcome everyone. So something we're going to attempt to start doing is giving more free options for education when it comes to mental wellness. So part of the Break the Stigma project we have launched with our education program is myself as an educator and our other clinicians that go out and educate also. We do in-person live trainings, but we have had a lot of requests to start offering these available online. So we'll get the free option to do them online. This will be the first run through of a portion of my education that I do when I go out for live trainings. So a little bit about myself, Michael Long, firefighter, paramedic, been doing it 14 years. I did found Break the Stigma Inc. Currently operate as the CEO and have a bachelor's in psychology. So as we move forward, a little bit about Break the Stigma. Our mission is very easy. It's Break the Stigma. We're committed to revolutionizing mental health support for first responders. We do this through our education, our seminars, summits, and conferences. We help break down the stigma and start changes in our culture and then in the environment for the first responders. Maintaining and focusing on the expansion of our comprehensive resource network, and then developing and delivering top-tier mental health presentations tailored for first responders, the leadership within the first responder field, and their families. So a little bit more about Break the Stigma as we move forward. So we started this organization as 1-2B for financial assistance. We do offer financial assistance for first responders that are looking for mental health treatment. We do this in a variety of ways. The main way we do it is providing any sort of financial assistance to people that are trying to seek more in-depth care, as in like inpatient care. We cover the associated costs that might prevent someone from going to get this treatment when they desperately need it. That can include anything from airfare to lawn care to anything that they can think of that might be a barrier for them to seek out help. Through that financial assistance too, through our resource network, we have multiple clinicians that work with us and have partnered with us to provide these resources to people. So these clinicians are culturally competent. They make sure that they understand who they're dealing with. And I would not send anyone that I would not feel comfortable myself going to. So with that, the financial assistance part, we make sure it's affordable. As you go see these clinicians, if you pick one of ours, there is partnership agreements to where we actually provide portions of what you would pay to go see them, or it's a very minimal cost out of pocket. We only do the minimal cost out of pocket to make sure that people, when they seek out help, that they have a little bit of buy-in themselves. The buy-in themselves just make sure that, you will show up. Everyone knows they want to show up to get better, but sometimes having that little bit of buy-in gives you that extra little kick to go in to do it. So moving forward, a little bit about myself. I've been a firefighter paramedic for 13 years. I'm going on 14 this year. Also a husband and a father of 2. What I bring strength, empathy, resilience to my work and my family. Throughout my experience on the front lines, I've seen firsthand the toll this job can take on mental health. That's why I founded Break the Stigma. One of the things through my own crisis scenario and things that I had gone through, we really look at mental health as an afterthought and a reactionary event. So mental health shouldn't be an afterthought. It should be a priority. We need to start being more proactive and preventative and not just reactive when it's necessary. So a big part of Break the Stigma project, and obviously the stigma is the large portion of the first responders that deal with mental health that keeps them from seeking out help. But within the stigma, we have the culture, the environment, and the perspective. If we look at those 3 aspects, they do build up that stigma. Someone that's been in this field for going on 14 years, I came into a time where I was trained by those that were still in the old school culture of we don't talk about it, we don't deal with it, we just bottle it down and we keep it down. That creates the environment where we have new people coming in that don't feel comfortable talking about the things they're doing because they're still being taught that culture. We are starting to see that culture switch, where we start to see where it's okay to admit something's bothering you or to discuss a call that might have been something that was more than what you could handle on your own. Also, being able to have those conversations, not just work-related stuff, but home-related stuff, and being able to go through those home issues, the work issues, whatever it be, to change the environment we live in. And then also, obviously, the perspective. If you look through perspective of years of service, there's people in the service that have been doing this a very long time, 20, 30 plus years. Their perspective on what mental health means in first responders is going to be completely different than those coming in that have no experience or 1 year or 2 years. It's a completely different perspective, and we need to figure out a way to make sure that perspective becomes one perspective from no matter how long you've been serving. So a little bit about my journey and what got me to where I'm at today with Break the Stigma and finding Break the Stigma. So I went through my own crisis. It started back in 2022. I had a lot of different issues with depression, anxiety leading up to this, but this is the end of 2022 is where it really took a turn for the worst. I thought I was handling it well. I was doing the things I needed to do to the bare minimum. I had that same mentality as I can do this on my own. I don't need any help. I was seeing a therapist, but it wasn't anything that was truly benefiting me. So that is when crisis started. It was in December of 2022. It had taken its major toll on me. I thought I was happy. I thought I was healthy. And then we actually had our first daughter. And when we had our first daughter, I thought that would kind of be what pushed me forward to start getting better. But it actually was that change in my life that caused me to actually go downhill. Not that my daughter was anything that caused that, but the stress associated with it, the change in life, the things that I had to sacrifice to make sure that she was happy and healthy and that our family was successful, led to some of those things, along with years of other things that had led up to these. Some of the major things I dealt with in my own story, the big one is the disassociation. We always hear about this and we think it's very simple that you just kind of take yourself out of the situation, and that's what disassociation is. But through these 4 months that I went through this crisis, the disassociation for me was essentially the top part of my brain shut down, and I had to move forward with basically survival instincts, the rationale, the ability to think appropriately and make proper decisions was no longer there. I was just surviving. And then through those 4 months, I have very little memory of any of it. And that makes it very difficult because I have to relive those 4 months and that story through the third person of hearing stories of things I did. There are bits and pieces I remember, but there's very little of that. And I have to fill the gaps with what people can tell me from in between. And then obviously through this, I dealt with a lot of depression. Depression, we all go through times in our life where we get a little depressed or we come back out of it. This was a new experience of depression for me. It was to the point that I was no longer able to get out of bed. I just didn't have any motivation. My drive was gone. My purpose and my identity was being threatened. So I was going into the point where what was the point of getting out of bed? And just being depressed was the only state I could manage to be in. Through that, though, I started experiencing rage attacks. We all get angry. We all have reactions to things that might be unnecessary. But when I say rage attacks, these became something that was aggressive and uncontrollable. I was breaking things. I was doing things that were well beyond what an angry response would be. And it was on an irrational base. It could be a small little thing that, would require no response, but it would send me over the edge. This caused a lot of issues between me and my family, my wife especially, who at times told me she was terrified of me. She knew that I wasn't capable of hurting them, nor would I ever hurt them. But in the frame of mind I was in those situations, she was worried about what I was capable of, and the fact that I had no real control over it. So trying to control all of these symptoms, I basically turned to our normal things we use for numbing, and that's like alcohol. So alcohol was, I don't want to say a benefit to me, but it was definitely a crutch I used. It was something I used because it helped numb the pain I was feeling. It helped turn down all of those bad things that were going on in my brain and almost made me forget about what was going on. The only problem with that is it started out as a little, did what it needed to do, and then it went to more and more. And then I realized I couldn't get through a day without it. It became one of those things where when I was getting off duty, I was grabbing alcohol on my way home, or there was already a bottle of whiskey in the truck ready to go. And then by noon, I was already drunk. And then I would sleep off that part of it and I would continue to drink and drink and drink. The one weird part about that is I was always rational enough to know that when I was on duty, that none of this thing was appropriate. And I was always able to function very highly at work. That was kind of that switch of so many years of doing this that I was able to continue to operate at that level that I needed to. But those 4 days off were very rough. So that led to a lot of addiction, not only to alcohol, but prescription medications. They were prescribing me all these medications to help with my symptoms, but they were addictive themselves. They were doing what I needed them to do. They were numbing it. But again, it wasn't doing what it needed to do. So then I started taking more and more and more until I started associating the fact that I could not take it for a few days and then take it all at once and then drink on top of it. And it would amplify the effects extremely. And I would not have to deal with the pain I was feeling. So I hate the word addict or alcoholic. There is that diagnosis. There is things about those things. But a lot of what we deal with when we start going down these roads, it's not addiction, it's substance use disorder. We're finding something to solve our problem. The only problem is what we're picking to solve our problem causes more problems. We're only getting rid of one problem, but we're causing 10 new problems. And then they all start to come out at once. So through this journey, I had ups and downs. I had good clinicians. I had good therapists. I had good doctors. I had bad clinicians. I had bad doctors. Things just weren't going my way. I couldn't find the help I really needed, nor would I admit to myself that I needed more help than what I was actually getting. So in the end, that led to me attempting to take my own life. Luckily, I was unsuccessful, but it kind of opened my eyes. And that led me to going to an inpatient facility out in Maryland that is for first responders. It was very based in kind of the things we experienced, but it was also getting out there and being with 60 plus other people that made me realize that this is not something we're all dealing with isolated or alone. There are tons of people out there all across the country that are dealing with similar things. And it really opened my eyes to know that I'm not alone. I always thought I was alone. I was never able to talk about it with anybody because I didn't think people would understand. And I said that a lot, where people wouldn't understand what I'm feeling. But then I realized as I started talking to people more, there was a lot of similarities in the way people were feeling, and nobody wanted to talk about it until we were in an environment where we could be vulnerable and safe. But that needs to be an environment we can create at home before we need to get to those points in our life. So these next few slides we'll go into are a lot of just the basics of things I do now, the things I noticed from previous, and then obviously post-treatment and being into my recovery. I learned things about myself from 10, 20 years ago that were significant to what led me up to my crisis, and things that I was doing and things that I see being done now that I think we could address early. So the first thing I'd like to discuss is the shell of emotions. We are really good about hiding our emotions. We're really good about just burying it down and just keeping it there. But the problem is we become so good at burying emotion. We can bury that sadness. We can bury the anger. We can bury the disbelief from the calls and the things we see and the things we do. And we're really good at just acting like that's not there. The problem with that is we bury all of our emotions. You can't just pick and choose what to become numb to. So we become numb to everything. There was points throughout my crisis that I realized I was now numb to happiness. I was now numb to the ability to feel joy, laughter, things like that. There was this instance where I remember where I was changing my daughter's diaper, and this was our newborn daughter. We had a lot of issues getting this new child, and we finally were able to have this baby. And I looked at her and I knew I should love her, and I knew I did love her, but emotionally, when I seen her, I had no emotional attachment. And I told my wife that there was no emotional attachment. I did not love this baby, but I don't know why. I know I should. And then I looked at my wife and told her the same thing. But then now, post recovery, I'm realizing that was because I was afraid of the negative emotions. But to get rid of those negative emotions, I had to numb all my emotions. I wasn't able to control just certain emotions. So a big point too, this is something I do on a daily basis now, and something I've done my entire life, but I never really paid attention to it, was just being a good person. I know that seems so cliche, and people are telling you that this is, just be a good person. It's that easy. It makes life so much better, but it really does. It's when you go out of your way to do something for somebody. Our jobs require us to do the right thing for other people. We get called in people's time of need, and we're there to help. But what about outside those times that we're on duty doing that? When do you go through life and say, all right, there's as simple as helping someone that's elderly put their groceries in the car, or helping someone lift something heavy, or get something off the top shelf, or just even in your family atmosphere, is you don't want to do something that your wife or your spouse wants you to do, or your kids want to play, or whatever it is, but you're changing their life by being involved. But you can choose to not be involved or be involved. And the way I do this is, when you look at in the mirror at the end of the day, are you proud of that day? Are you able to look back on that day and say, wow, I accomplished X, Y, and Z, and I'm proud of who I am. I did a lot of really good. The thing is, it's not every day. You're not going to have opportunity every day to be this wonderful person. But at the end of the day, even if you can look in the mirror and say, okay, it was a successful day. I didn't get, anything done that I was desperately wanting to get done, or I didn't do the extra, but I didn't do anything that I'm not proud of. Those are very successful days too. And also, when you look in that mirror, do you feel fulfilled? Are you fulfilled with the person looking back at you? Are you fulfilled with the things you could have done? Me personally, like I said, when I help somebody in need, that I don't want anything in return. It's just I see somebody struggling, even if it's a simple thing. It's amazing that the wave that comes over you of just happiness, and you smile and you're like, oh, they're appreciative. And even if they're not, it's like I help somebody, and knowing that you're doing it for yourself, the person you want to be, I think makes it that much more justifiable to help you be that good person and help you be proud of the person you are. So one of the big things within the mental health field, obviously, and it's by far one of the most talked about topics, and it should be, because it is the extreme of mental health, and that's suicide. So when we talk about suicide, though, it is a late stage in mental health. When we talk about mental health, I like to talk about it in the stages of mental health. So just like any other progressive disease, we look at this stages. Stage 4 being the terminal end. Interventions are very, very in depth or invasive, and generally it's a terminal diagnosis. And then you have the stage 1 of disease, where it's generally early. It's simple intervention. It's things you can do at home. It's things you can do with just a regular doctor. You don't require all of these major interventions. It's still simple to fix. It may seem hard, but it's still things you can do on your own and with the help of the proper clinicians or doctors. The problem is with mental health, we don't generally address it until we're at stage 3 or 4, when it's a notable change in someone. Those changes are noticeable early in stage 1 and stage 2, where things are simple to be addressed. But we don't find it a problem until it's stage 3 and stage 4, because those start affecting your everyday life. And again, we go through this where we look at it from a perspective of we don't have to address anything until it's necessary, which, in my opinion, the necessary time would be when you start noticing changes, not when the changes are so extreme that it's affecting your everyday life. So the way I like to say it is, if you go to the doctor, and I don't necessarily like to use a comparison, but it gets the point across, is if you go to the doctor and you get diagnosed with stage 1 cancer, are you going to wait till it's stage 4 to reach for more treatment? Are you going to skip all the treatments available until you're at stage 4, when your percentages of survival are lower, your interventions are more in depth or more invasive? Or if you find out right away you have some sort of form of cancer at stage 1, are you not going to do everything in your power to stop it right there? So why should mental health be any different? If you are starting in that stage 1 phase of mental health, where you're starting to notice changes, you're starting to feel a difference, you're seeing behavioral or cognitive changes, address it then. See what kind of interventions can be done then. They can be as simple as changing things you do throughout your day. And you could stay in that stage 1, or you can get better. You don't have to progress until the major things are needed. So, just like any other terminal disease, when you get to stage 4, I look at mental health too. A stage 4 is terminal, because generally the way out of stage 4 is when those people are at that suicidal state. And suicide is terminal. There is no coming back from your suicide. I know it's terrible to say, but that's how it is. The only point, from the pictures I have there, it's the point of no return is when you're 6 feet under. You can't change that. You can't do anything about that once you get to there. So if we address it early, can we avoid that point of no return for everyone? Can we get to the point where we're addressing these issues at stage 1 and stage 2, and we don't have to get to that stage 4 where things increase and we have that more likelihood of the terminal diagnosis? So something I heard when I was in my inpatient facility, it was a person that worked there, was in his recovery himself, and he was dedicating his time as a person working there to help people get through their hard times and their issues too. And he was telling a story. He was a recovering alcoholic, was also suicidal at times, but he had a night he was telling us about. And he said, I had relapsed. I was going through a really rough time, and I called my sponsor and I told him that I was going to kill myself. And his sponsor told him, "You're going to kill the wrong person." And we all kind of looked at him and we're like, that doesn't make any sense. How do you kill the wrong person? You know, I'm suicidal. I'm not homicidal. I'm not looking to take people with me. I'm done dealing with myself. And he explained it to us and he goes, well, if you kill that person when you're suicidal, you kill you right now, but you're also killing everybody you could become. You're killing the person you could be in a week, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years, or 60 years down the road. You're getting rid of all of those versions of yourself. If I would have been successful that night, would I be sitting here talking to you, explaining the things I went through and trying to change the culture, trying to change the stigma? I would not be the man I am today. I would not be able to be what I consider a very good husband, a very good father, a very good firefighter, a very good paramedic, and striving to help other people get to the best places in their life. Post treatment and into recovery, I realized that the light on the other side of it is it's better than it ever was. I feel like I had a great life leading into crisis and I thought things were fine, but I didn't realize how bad things were even outside of crisis before I got the appropriate treatment. And now I live life in this new light, this new atmosphere, and this new environment that is just wonderful. And I want other people to experience that, and I want them to understand that state of suicide, you're getting rid of the ability to ever be that person that gets to that. You don't get to see the light on the other side, but you also don't ever have to get to that point where you have to think or contemplate or have the ideations of suicide. You can address it early, address those issues early. So going into the next slide, some of the things that I talk about are just little tips, tricks, skills that we can do when things are starting to change. So mastering stress management techniques sounds super simple, and it is, but it's going through the different stress management techniques and figuring out what works for you. What's beneficial to you? Because any sort of management techniques, whether it be for stress or anxiety or panic, whatever it be, you have to find something that works. And you also have to find something that doesn't make you more anxious doing it, trying to solve your anxiety, than what it would be if you just didn't do it. So there's no one size fits all. I do multiple different things off these lists. These are just big ones that I like to point out that I think are super beneficial to almost everybody. And they're super beneficial to me in ways. First off is box breathing, the 4-7-8 breathing. It's inhales, holding, exhales, and inhales. And find your own variations. There's millions of videos out there. There's tons of different ways to control your breathing. It's finding what works for you. I don't necessarily do the box breathing. I do variations of it where it's very quick inhales with long exhales and some pauses in between. Just look up videos. But breathing has been a substantial thing to help within my recovery, to when I start feeling more stressed or I start feeling that anxiety coming back or even mood changes. I can start looking back and focusing on my breathing. It not only pulls the breathing back in, it slows down the physiological effects of the anxiety or the stress. And it also, going down to one of the other bullet points, it makes you more mindful of the situation you're in right now. It brings you back to the present. It makes you focus on something that is internal so you can kind of shut down the external factors at the moment in time. So look up breathing techniques, see what works for you, try them. If some don't work, no big deal. Try a different one. If none of them work, find a different method to try stress management. It's one of those things. And it's also, as we go through this, that they're skills. And it's just like any other skill in your career or your job or at home, you don't master them with one try. You have to continue to work on them to get better at them until you do master them. And you may never master some of these skills, but if you get pretty good at them, they can make a big difference. So grounding techniques. Grounding techniques are another great way to bring yourself back to the present. Grounding techniques like the 5-4-3-2-1 method. It's just a method that makes you use all of your senses. You're seeing what you can see, you're smelling what you can smell, you're hearing what you can hear, and just go through those. And again, it brings you back to the present moment in time. It takes away the external stresses, the external anxiety, and it brings you back to the internal of what's going on. And it makes you, again, more present, and you're able to get yourself back into the right frame of mind. And a huge thing is that gratitude. I think gratitude is something we've lost when it comes to stress management. We get stressed out about little things, but when you look back at it, is it something that you should be more grateful for than you are stressed about? So look at one of my stories I always use is when I was in treatment, me and my wife were not doing well when I left. She never said that she was going to leave, but I didn't know what was going to happen. And we were on the phone one day, and she told me that she was changing my daughter's diaper. And when I get done with my treatment and come home, that I'm on diaper duty for 6 months. And I was like, wow. I told my clinician, I was like, this is awesome. Like, she expects me to be home for, she's at least for 6 months. Like, that was a huge uplift for me. But then she pointed out, she goes, how many times have you changed a diaper before now and been angry that you had to change a diaper? And I was like, well, yeah, you're right. Like, I always was like, it's changing a poopy diaper. It's nothing fun. But when I changed my daughter's diaper, it was never change it and move on. There's times that comes in. Most of the time it was you changed, you got cleaned up, and then, you played for a minute, you tickled, you laughed, you made noises, you made faces. There was some fun to it too. And I always took that for granted, those little moments in time, and just being grateful for those little moments in time that you might look at as a stressful or just a crappy situation. No pun intended there. But being grateful and being present. Mindfulness and meditation. There's tons of apps out there to try. I like meditation. Never thought I would. I'm not one that can sit still very long, but I do like meditation now. My thing is, though, I like certain types of meditation. I can't do meditation where people are talking. I don't like that. I just can't stand when people talk and they're trying to be calm and quiet, and there's just the voices drive me nuts. And again, it's one of those tips that when you're trying something, if you get more anxiety from doing it, is it benefiting you? Probably not. So when I figured out meditation was actually beneficial for me, I found forms of meditation that didn't require someone else talking to me. Those work great for me. Some people might love the ones where it's guided, where there's someone talking. I just like noises, soft, subtle noises, piano, waterfalls, things like that. And just being able to focus my brain in on that meditation, that point in time, those noises, and not someone trying to guide me through it. But try different methods again. Try what works for you until you find it. And it might not be a version of meditation. It might just be something of a mind trick or a breathing technique. Just find different things that work, but try something. And the big one is engaging in regular physical activity. One of the things when I started getting into crisis or having issues is that I became isolated, but also a recluse, and I stopped taking care of myself physically. I stopped eating appropriately. I stopped eating at all in general. I was an avid gym goer. I stopped going to the gym. I stopped doing any physical activity. I spent more time in bed than I did doing anything physical. And I didn't realize how much of an impact that was making on myself during that time. But now, even if it might not be the gym or working out, but just being able to go out for a walk, even on the sidewalk in the subdivision, or if I have time to get to a trail, doing a walk or doing something physical just to get the blood going and burn off some of that energy that's stored up in there that's causing that little bit of anxiety. We all have that energy reserve that's in our system that's ready to go. And if we just leave it sitting there and don't utilize it, it's just waiting to get out. So channel it into something proactive in the physical sense. So emotional regulation and coping skills. There's tons of them out there. Again, these are all just ones that I've tried that I like or that I would suggest. You got to still kind of go through and find what works for you. But the stop technique is a great one. I use it a lot, especially when I still have irritable moments. I still have times where I can see my anger building in what I do. And it's not necessarily this exact method of stop, but very, very similar. And I just kind of built off of it as if I can feel myself getting emotionally charged, I will just step back and I will stop. And I will know that anything from that point on is not going to be positive. So I have to stop, take that breath, calm myself down, get back in the present, and tell myself, is this justifiably something to be angry about or to be irritated about, or is this a rational response? But and that takes 10 or 15 seconds. And it allows me to, again, center myself back to the present. And if it is irrational responses, I can calm myself back down or tell that person that I'm having an argument with or the situation I'm in, I can just take myself out of it and say, we need to address this at a later time when I have more time to get my thoughts together and understand what's going on better. Because I like to say a lot that anything I say from this point on is not going to be productive. So why would I continue? Give me time to be productive again. Identifying what triggers you. It can be difficult to figure out what your triggers are. And it can be difficult to figure out if things are actually triggering you. There's tons of things out there. And is it a trigger, or is it just a stressful situation? Is it something that happens very infrequently, or is it something that happens a lot? But find those things that you seem to kind of throw you off what your norm is, and then create a coping plan ahead of time. Like I said, I'm one that when I get into a stressful situation, I can start having that irrational anger come back. And what I've done is have those coping plans in place. I step back, I take my breath, I look at what's going on, and I try to keep myself present. Or do I need to just exclude myself from the situation? Or is it something that I just need 5 minutes and then we can come back and readdress it? It's finding those coping plans and then having them prepared ahead of time. And then also, if it's something that's with a regular person like your spouse or your kids or whatever it is, inform them of what those plans are, so that way they understand that you're not just trying to stop the conversation. You just need that time to make sure that it's productive and not something that's going to be detrimental to the argument. So accepting your emotions, I think that's a hard one for a lot of us to do. We like to think we're all strong and that we're all able to just bury those emotions and we don't have to feel and we shouldn't feel. And if you do feel something, it's not there's something wrong with you. And that's not true. It's finding your emotions and accepting that they're there. Don't judge yourself. We're all allowed to have emotions. We're all allowed to have feelings. And then also the people around you. If someone's having an emotion, don't judge them for having that emotion. Find out why they're having that emotion. And that goes the same for you. If you're having an emotional response to something, try and figure out why you're having that emotional response. Is it a necessary emotional response? And then ask yourself, if you're having an irrational emotional response, why is that the response? And sometimes that's where it's not just up to you, it's up to a good clinician or a good therapist to kind of help you break through all that and figure out what those emotions mean. My emotions always seem to stem back to anger and rage when I was going through my worst. Now I still have those little bit of hiccups where I start to get angry or irrational, and I have to be able to accept that that's how I'm feeling, but not allow myself to continue down that path. Journaling, gratitude journaling or daily reflection. Journaling, I was not a huge fan of journaling. I never wrote anything down. When I was out in Maryland for my inpatient facility, it was something that they suggested I do, and I never realized how much it would help. When I journaled out there, I literally wrote out my entire life story from beginning to end, from the first memory I had till the end. And being able to put it in paper and read it back to myself was almost like it was not just something that was stuck in my head that was on repeat. It was something that was real. It was something I could hold and something I could read. And gave me the ability to actually read through it and address the issues that are inlaid in that story. And it was something I was never able to do until I actually wrote it down. Huge fan of journaling. I don't do it as much as I should. I don't do it nearly as much as I did in the beginning, but it is something that can be very beneficial to people, and I highly suggest that too. And then also back to the physical activity. Find physical activity you enjoy. Not everybody's a gym goer. Not everybody's a runner. Even if it's walks. I was a huge proposer of yoga. I thought it was not cool and it was not something I wanted to do. I'm an avid yoga person now. Once, twice, 3 times a week, I try to do yoga. It's super relaxing for me, even being in the positions that are painful. But it allows you to control your body and be present in the breathing. I never thought it was going to be something that I would enjoy. There'd be somebody at the firehouse doing yoga, and I was the first one to say something to make fun of them. But now I'm the one right next to them doing it. And that's the same way. If somebody around you finds something that's helping them, encourage them to keep doing it. Don't judge them for it. Don't make it about something that is going to turn them away from doing something that's helping them. And I understand in the firehouse and ambulance bases and wherever you're at, there's the jokes and the things that are going on, and I still do it, and we all do it. It's just knowing where the line of just having fun with it and actually being detrimental to somebody's well-being. I'm somebody, if there's like, hey, I'm going to go do yoga, you want to join me? And I'm going to make fun of them for saying you want to do yoga, but then I'm going to go join them because I do enjoy it. And they probably heard it from me that yoga was beneficial, but it's still that joking manner that goes on in the firehouses or the ambulance bases. So reframing negative thoughts. Again, something I think we all challenge is we think very negative. We're a negative bias being. The human mind is very much on the negative bias. It's just how society is. And we go through it trying to figure out ways how we messed up or why we didn't do things right. But why are we doing that? Can we not take it in a way of like, look at all the positive again. It's that gratitude, looking at a situation and being grateful for things that happened, but also looking at the positives that came out of a situation. You know, we can sit there and say, well, what if I would have done that? What if I would have done this? What if I wouldn't have done this? Well, you can't change that. There is no going back and changing who you were and what you did, but you can change the present and you can change the future. How do you address those situations? And a lot of it is getting rid of that negative persona around yourself. You're not a bad person. You're not messed up because you're having issues. You're not different because you're having these mental health issues. It's just something you're dealing with. So this is what it is. How are we going to address it now, and how are we going to address it in the future is the way to look at it. Using positive self-talk and affirmations. I know it sounds crazy. I remember when my therapist out in Maryland told me that the first time is she wants me to wake up every morning and tell myself like 10 or 15 things about myself that are positive. And I was like, this is crazy. I was like, this is not going to benefit me. But it was amazing just starting to do it because I was in the program. I was diving in. I was doing what I was told just to see what would help. At that point, I was at rock bottom and I needed to find something that helped. So I was willing to try anything. And don't get me wrong, there was things that they had me try that did not work for me, that I did not like, and I still don't do to this day. So don't think that all of these things are going to be perfect. Find what works for you. So the positive self-talk and affirmations. It was amazing how much that negative mentality I had about myself changed when I told myself that I could be positive. I was telling myself things that made me feel good about myself instead of waking up and looking in the mirror and telling myself how terrible I was. But it's the same thing about being fulfilled with your day and who do you see in the mirror. They all kind of circle back to each other. Is when you're looking in the mirror, are you able to tell yourself you're fulfilled or you're happy? And even again, if you don't have anything from that day, you can still come up with things to tell yourself of why you're successful, why you're happy, why things are good. Even if things don't look great at the moment in time, there's still good hidden in there. Find those things to be grateful for and tell yourself about them and tell yourself that you are a good person. And even if you messed up, tell yourself it's okay. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to have a bad day. I still have bad days. I have more than I would like to, but I don't think there'll ever be a time where nobody has a bad day ever. So find a positive in any situation. Again, they all circle together. Write down thoughts and analyze them for truth versus fear. That's again, that negative thoughts, the cognitive things like that, and the journaling and all that is as you write it down, you can actually reread it to yourself, almost like in the third person, and say, is this something that is actually affecting me? Is it the truth? Or is it an irrational story I made up in my head that now I'm running with? I was very much a person that created situations out of nothing, and then got angry or upset about them. And it really wasn't even a real thing. It was something I made up in my own head that, there was enough little things in life that I could put this story together, and then I just ran with it. And it made things a million times worse. Being able to write those things down or those negative thoughts you're having and looking at it and saying, is this really the truth? Or is it just something that I'm developing in my own brain to feel comfortable in the negative side? So building a strong mental health foundation. Huge thing for me. Again, it's something I think everyone can benefit from, but also very important for me is that daily routine is not having time throughout your day where you just have no idea what you're going to do with it. Now, there's times where part of your daily routine is to do nothing. That's fine, but it's part of your daily routine. I like to have a plan. I like to have my days scheduled as best I can, even in a hectic lifestyle with 48-hour shifts and things like that. I can't always, say this is what's going to happen at 8. This is what's going to happen at 10. This is what's going to happen at noon. But I have a rough idea of how my day is going to go and the things I want to get done. And knowing that the daily routine can change throughout the day is important too. But knowing that there's a structure there, having a structure in your day is important. Prioritizing sleep and good nutrition. I'm sure we all deal with the fact that our sleep is terrible. I don't think anybody sleeps well in our careers, whether it be fire, EMS, police, dispatch, whatever it is. Our sleeps are affected negatively through our jobs. But in my case, I have 4 days off to make sure that my sleep is not affected. So I go through, I have a nightly routine that I do. I, take my medicine, take my vitamins. I put, my girls down for bed, and then I go take an ice bath. And I try to do that every night. It's part of my routine, and it's also part of my sleep plan. Ice baths are great. Love it. Highly suggest it. Do the research into how to do it appropriately. Don't jump into something like that because there are the negatives, but there are so many positives that can come from it. But that sleep routine, it's just like your daily routine. I have, girls down, vitamins, medicine, ice bath, warm up, shower, And then I try to play my game that I have, my daily game that I play on my phone. And then I try to read 10 to 20 pages of a book every night and to help wind the brain back down. But I do that every night in that order. And it just helps me get very good sleep. Having that routine into sleep, into a relaxation state. And I've noticed, and whether you have a watch or anything that tracks your sleep, or it studies your sleep and keeps track of all your stuff, it's amazing when I started developing these routines, how much my watch would tell me my sleep has improved. And I'm getting sleep scores and energy scores that are through the roof because of these routines. And now there's days that I can't get them accomplished, and I can see and feel the next day the drastic changes of not being able to follow that routine and not putting sleep as a higher priority. And then good nutrition. Again, jobs, careers, things we do affect our nutrition, the ability to eat at certain times or whatever it be, or to be able to just sit down and make a meal. And I'm not saying this while you're on duty or whatever you're doing, but if you can do it, and if you're home and you don't have those stipulations or limitations to be able to eat well or do things good for your body, take the time to prioritize those things. Limiting substances which impact your mood, caffeine, alcohol, drugs, whatever it be, whatever you do. And I'm not one. I don't think everyone should quit drinking. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think there's people out there that can relatively take care of themselves even when they're drinking. They know their limitations. They stick to their limitations, and they don't use it in excess. Myself was not one of those people, so I choose not to embrace substances anymore. It's been a great decision for me, but I still go out to bars with people. I still hang out with friends at bars. I still do things where people are drinking, and I don't hound them for still drinking in front of me. It's their choice, and it's something that they can limit themselves or they can control it. But knowing what your limitations are on different substances and finding that and making sure it's not something that you can't set that limitation to. And if it is something that you can't control the limitation to mentally or physically, then it's probably something you need to address, something you need to either kick altogether or find ways to regulate it better. And then scheduling regular time for hobbies and meaningful activities. Your hobby is not work. Your hobby is not taking a nap. And even though naps are important and it can be a hobby, but find something that you are fulfilled doing. Fishing, hunting, going to the gym, there's different aspects of life that's a hobby, something that you can be proud of going to get to do or be excited about going to do. And activities that are meaningful to you, things that fulfill your day, that give you a meaning, that give you a purpose, and just things that can burn that extra energy or just kind of rejuvenate your mental state. Digital wellness and mental health. Didn't realize how much of an impact this is until recently. This wasn't even something, it was something I learned through my inpatient care because they actually took your phones away from you. It was the greatest thing in the world. Now that I'm back, I realized that it was a huge benefit to not have my phone because the doom scrolling, I'm guilty as the next person of just scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever it is in the morning. And, you wake up out of bed and the first thing you do once you brush your teeth is you go look at your phone. And then you get sucked into the world of social media. And next thing you know, you're finding an article and you're reading the comments and you're getting angry about the comments. And all of a sudden your entire day is set off that anger. Your first emotion throughout the day after waking up is anger because you're reading these dumb comments or you're arguing with people on the internet or whatever it be. It's like, so I've set a precedence where I don't touch my phone for about an hour in the mornings. I let myself get ready for the day, set my mentality, set the pace for the day. And then if I have time, jump into social media, but it's not something that I look for right off the bat. And I'm not saying there's anything bad about social media. It has its time, but we need to keep rolling and keep going with our day. And we have to address social media as it is. It's something that we have to limit also. So also with social media, you can go through and find things that are actually uplifting and beneficial and make sure that your social media is filled with those things and not other things. It's the algorithms throughout social media. They pick the things that you're more likely to look at. And you have to be able to find those things and keep adding them to your algorithm. So again, finding content that's beneficial, not just time consuming. Set up screen-free times before bed. There's all the studies out there that the phone light and stuff affects your REM sleep and different things like that. And I think it's 100% true. I still use my phone before bed, but it's one of those things. It's not right before I go to bed. When I talk about the sleep routine, like I said, I play my game on my phone that I play every night. I finish that up. But the last thing I do before I go to bed is put the phone down, put it on silent, and then I read. And it gives me about a half hour of no screen time, sometimes more, depending if it's a good book and I'm getting stuck into it and I want to keep reading. But it gives me that break between sleep and phone time. And it helps just keep that mentality relaxed, keep the brain shut down so you can actually get decent sleep. And then if you want to, you can find apps that promote focus and positivity, mindfulness apps, meditation apps, things like that. There's tons of apps you can actually find that are beneficial. So creating a supportive environment, surrounding yourself with people who listen without judgment, surrounding yourself with positive, understanding individuals, communicate boundaries and stick to them, join supportive groups and peer-led communities. All of that's important. It's the environment you live in is what you're going to surround yourself with. And the more you surround yourself with the things that you want, the more your goals, your meaning, your purpose, your identity start to formulate around that. If you, like myself, a lot of my environment pre-crisis was, partying and drinking and things like that. Post-treatment and into recovery, I had to chop some of those chains. I had to get rid of some of those people. I had to get myself out of some of those communities and some of those different areas that were not going to be beneficial for me, or that weren't positive anymore, or that people that just didn't understand who I was. Also people that weren't in the same frame of mind that I was in, that I wanted to progress, that I wanted to get better, that I wanted to be healthy, that I wanted to be happy. So I surrounded myself with people that are understanding and that are in that same frame of mind that I am, that want to continue to be positive. And it's sometimes hard. It's cutting connections with people and friendships and relationships with people that might be lifelong. But is it beneficial? And then sometimes you don't have to cut them, or you don't have to get rid of those relationships, but explaining to someone what your goals are and how they can assist you, or how they can change a little bit to help the environment change. And if they're a true friend or a true person in a relationship, they should understand that and they should help. You don't have to tell them to change the entire person they are, but they can at least understand what you're trying to do and what you're trying to go through, and find those people. And if they're willing to work with you, then that's great. Keep those connections alive. But if they're not willing to work with you and they're dragging you down, it might be time to cut those connections. So setting goals and finding a purpose. Set your small, achievable goals. I like to do that. I have large goals. I have 5-year plans, 10-year plans, 20-year plans, things I want to do, the big successes that I want to have. But those are long term. You can't set a goal 10 years from now and expect to meet it without little goals in between. You can't reach for the moon and not start out on the ground. So finding the different things throughout your goals to achieve, the small things to reach, it can be as simple as what you can do each day to reach a larger goal. Plus, even if just a little goal for the day, I want to get out of bed at X time, 6:30 in the morning, or I want to go to bed by 9. Those are goals. And if you start to meet them, it's rewarding because you're doing what your goal is. Even if it's not something that's this major goal that's going to be life changing, it's something that you're finishing and it's something that you're sticking with. And it makes it to where you're more able to focus on larger goals too. And then what gives your life meaning and purpose? Find the things and the goals and the purposes that give your life meaning. My life meaning, I was one of those people that the fire service that was my meaning, my purpose, my identity. That's all I had. And then I found my wife, we started dating, and it was like, oh, now I'm a fiance, now I'm a husband. Those were purposes, those were goals. But I was still very much fire oriented. Then we had a kid, and it was now I'm a father. And I was never able to transition what my purpose was or what made life meaningful for me. And then post recovery, I realized what is my purpose, what is meaningful to me, what makes my life worth living. It's still the fire service, it's still EMS, it's still my family, it's still being a husband and a father. But what percentages, what are the more important things, focusing on them all, and what builds more of a meaningful life, and focusing on those. One of the major purposes and meaning parts of the life that make meaningful for me now that I never had before was doing this, was starting Break the Stigma and doing these education series and going out and talking to people and helping people achieve the same things that achieve the things I am, but also not having to go through what I went through. That is a very big purpose, and it makes my life meaningful, and it helps me continue on my path. So long-term resilience building, just reflecting on your past. Don't live in your past. You can't change your past. Your past shapes you, but it doesn't define you. It does make you who you are today. But how can you take that past and move forward? How can you change the present and how can you change the future? If something you did in the past is negative and you can't let it go, well, what can you change in the future that those things may not ever happen again? And embrace a growth mindset. Setbacks are opportunities. Nobody's going to do everything perfect every time. We're going to fail. That's okay. Failure is just a way to keep growing. If you fail once and give up, you'll never grow. But there's times where you might fail 10 times, but that 11th time, you'll be successful. And it'll probably lead to more than if you would have been successful that first time, because all of those things you learned in those other opportunities and those other failures, you were able to adapt and put into practice to be able to be successful. Practice adaptability and acceptance in daily life. Prioritize regular checks-in with a therapist and coach. Firm believer, everyone should go to therapy at least once a year. And I say that because it's a third party, unbiased opinion. It's not someone that's on your side. It's not someone that's on your spouse's side. It's not someone that's on your chief's side or your captain's side or somebody within your workforce that, might be an issue or a stressor in your life. They're unbiased. They have no say on either side. My therapist loves to call me out on things. I love it because I'll tell stories and I'll say, oh, they did this, they did that, and this is this, and this happened. And she'll be like, well, you did that. Like, that's your problem, not their problem. And you're putting it on them. And it's like, oh, so that accountability, it keeps you accountable. And I think that's very important. I go once a month just for accountability. And it's just a check-in for me sometimes. It's working on things throughout, things stressful or whatever happened, but it's someone I know that's unbiased that I'm going in and I'm checking in with and saying, yep, I'm doing good. And then they can ask questions and they can tell me, well, you're lying, or is your integrity there? But also you're probably going to go in and be honest because they'll be able to read through all the BS. But it gives you someone to be accountable with. And again, it's that third party unbiased. And I think that's very important. And then navigating crisis moments. And again, all of this stems back, and I'll just put this in here now, is navigating crisis moments. This isn't, and even all the things we've just talked about, it's not about always just you, but all those people around you. This is all valuable information for yourself and for those around you. I hope to God nobody that ever listens to this ever has to deal with any of this or use any of this. But even if they don't, there might be somebody that they care for or work with or are close to that deals with something in the mental health realm. And now they have some tools and some skills and some tips and some tricks, and they can maybe help that in person. And then you get into we would love to prevent every crisis and crisis never happen again, but I don't think that'll ever happen. I think it's something that is going to be prevalent for years to come. I hope we all find a solution at some point in time that mental health just goes away and everybody's happy and healthy. But we all know the truth. It's not going to be that way. So knowing what to do, and that's knowing what to do in those crisis moments for yourself and for others. And it's, having a crisis plan. If you start to feel yourself going downhill, who are you going to call? What are you going to do? What methods are you going to take on? What, do you have a therapist to contact? Do they have a plan? Memorize and store emergency contacts and support hotlines. Know who to call. Again, not just for yourself, but if you start to get into a situation with someone else, know who to call, know who's available, know who to send them to. So you're not just like, oh, yep, that sucks. You're going through some stuff. I don't know what to do with it, so I'm just going to leave. At least you can do is say, hey, here's a phone number. I don't know anything about it. It'll get you to this, this person, and they might be able to help you. But they at least have something to go on. Grounding and distraction techniques, and through panic attacks or anxiety or stress, all stems back to all the things we just talked about. And using safe words and signals with trusted people. Sounds kind of silly, but it's actually kind of one of those things that I discussed when I first came back from my inpatient facility, when we started going to events and large crowds and things like that, where it was going to be stressful, it was going to bring up negative memory or whatever it be, was, I discussed with my wife of, like, if things get out of hand and I need to leave, we had a plan. And it was a way of knowing my limitations and knowing my boundaries and when I needed to address them, and not just kind of suck it up and trying to get through it and run the chance of something bad happening. So knowing your plan and knowing when to signal and have those safe words, or having a plan set in place with trusted people that can help, fill those plans and make sure that they work out. So The cost of mental health, and this isn't just the cost of going for treatment. This isn't the cost of what it costs to go see a therapist. It's what it's going to cost you if you don't address the mental health, or if we don't address the culture and the stigma. We're going to, for myself, the cost, it almost cost me my career. At one point in time, I was dubbed not fit for duty anymore. And my identity since I was just out of high school has been a firefighter. And I was going to lose that. I was willing to throw it all away because I refused to get the right help. Relationships. Obviously, my relationship with my wife suffered. I didn't know if we were even going to still have a relationship. Um, I have relationships with family and friends that will never be mended because of things I did or said. And it was, again, it continued. It didn't have to happen that way, but I didn't seek out the help. I continued to suffer, and I took it out on other people. Financial, and again, I'm not talking about the cost of therapy or going to an inpatient facility or medications, whatever it is. It's when you get into that frame of mind. For me, I was spending money like it was free. My wife at one point cleared our bank accounts out. And she called me and she said, I'm not leaving you. This isn't for any reason other than we have bills to pay and you're just spending all our money. Because I knew the consequences of spending the money, but I was more worried about numbing my pain and fixing myself in the inappropriate ways that I wasn't looking at the consequences of what I was doing with our money. I lost the ability for having a healthy emotional state. I was no longer to have healthy emotions. They were all negative emotion, anger and rage. Family, I was losing family. One of the stories that still hits home to me to this day is that, my father-in-law, who I have a really good relationship with, we had a really good relationship before all this. And there was a night that my wife had left and took our daughter. Again, it was my fault. She was terrified. I was acting a fool. I was having rage attacks. And I was on the phone just screaming, and I was angry, and I can still hear his voice over the phone telling me that I was just a no good drunk. And that still haunts me to this day, that someone that I, loved and trusted and I thought and respected highly would say that. But at the moment in time, with my behavior and things, that was an appropriate response, but it hit me hard. And looking back at it, it's still very difficult to deal with. But I was able to grow from it. I was able to learn from it. And even though I can still vividly remember that moment in time, it's something that I still utilize today to make sure I stay on an appropriate path. Physical, it cost me my physical health. I was having physical symptoms. My thyroid stopped working. Obviously, I was losing weight like crazy. I wasn't eating. Basically, my body was shutting down around me because I wasn't taking care of it anymore because of my mental health. And then the big thing out, self identity, meaning, purpose. I lost all of that. I lost being a firefighter. I lost being a husband. I lost being a father. I lost all of those throughout this. And I lost a meaning and a purpose and an identity in life, which then sent me into a further spiral. But again, I seen myself losing all of those things through it. And I just let it continue. I didn't do anything about it because I was more worried about what was going on in my own head and not dealing with it than actually addressing the things I was losing and going to get the right help. And then at the end of the day, it can cost you everything. Again, once you end up 6 feet under, there's no getting any of this back. So the cost of mental health that is extreme is if you don't address it and it gets to its worst state, it can cost you everything. So one of my cliche sayings I always use, and I don't know why I like it. It's just I'm an imagery person. I like to imagine. And your journey may be in the darkness, but there is light to guide you. The way I look at this is when you're going through those dark times, you might not know the path. You might not know the direction you're going, but you have to find an end. And that end can be happiness. And throughout that dark path, little lights appear to help guide your way. And I like to look at those little lights as your support system or your doctors or your clinicians, your therapists. And as those support systems and those people are addressing you, they're not holding your hand and taking you to the end. You have to do the work. You have to get yourself back to the light. But they can be little blips of light throughout your path to help guide you to the purpose in that meaningful and happy life at the end. They're just there to help guide you. You still have to do the work. So again, change starts here. It starts with all of us. And I appreciate you listening, and I appreciate everything that's going on and that all the support we have. If you took anything from today, I appreciate it. Just like I said, be a good person, take care of yourself. Let's work on breaking down the stigma. Let's work on changing the culture. Let's work on changing the environment. We can all do this together, and it's not a one person's going to fix this all. It is going to be a community effort. It's going to be all of us together making these major changes. Our little disclaimer we put in our presentations, we offer services, we have resources, and we recognize that we're not the only option. And if you need further assistance, there's other options out there, and you should explore. You should see what works for you. There is not a one-size-fits-all approach. There's not something that's going to be, we don't have the ultimate answers. We don't have any, we don't have all of the answers by any means. We have good answers. I'm very proud of what we've built, but we might not be a fit for everyone. So research the different places that are out there, research the different ways to, seek out help and find what works for you. And if that's through us, great. Even if we're not the choice, but you need somebody to guide your way, we'll help you find other resources. Our goal is not to be the best, but it is to be someone that can help. All of my clinicians, my resource network, we're all in it to make sure people are happy, healthy, and safe. And even if that's utilizing other aspects within, the community, we'll do our best to help facilitate all that too. So, and if you're watching this, like I said, we're going to post this live on our website, on YouTube. Hopefully it gets a lot of views and people can see it and look back at it, share it, spread it. But one of the things I ask is if you feel obligated or would like to do it, there is a survey. This is a personal survey that we do for the organization and myself. We are trying to develop more education programs, better curriculum, better topics, things that people want to talk about, and continue to make this ever-changing, progressive education series. So through this survey, you can fill out the questions. We can get a better understanding of what people are wanting, what people are needing to hear, what people want to talk about, but also be honest. And if we said something you don't agree with or anything along those lines, or you just think this was dumb, let us know why. Give us reasons, things we can change, things we can fix, things we can keep the same that were super important or that were beneficial to somebody. Those are all things we want to know. So again, my name is Michael Long. I appreciate your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to visit our website, www.breakthestigmainc.com, or you can email me anytime at breakthestigmainc@gmail.com.